My pleasure to present to you today Senate Resolution 371. This is an application to Congress for a balanced budget amendment to be procured through a convention of the states. This is provided by Article 5 of the United States Constitution, which gives two ways to amend the United States Constitution. The first is that Congress itself may vote and propose an amendment, submit it to the states, and it, of course, requires 3/4 of the states to ratify it before becoming law. There's an alternate method for doing this that this application calls for, and that's an amendment convention. Anytime 2/3 of the states apply to Congress to have an amendment convention for the purpose of proposing an amendment to the Constitution, they must submit these type of petitions, and Congress is required to call that. This is single subject matter focused, just on a balanced budget amendment. I think that's one of the biggest problems facing our country today is our fiscal concerns. This passed your committee last year. Well, actually, it was Mark Hamilton's committee, the Government Oversight Committee, that it passed, and it was on your rules calendar. The last day or two just didn't get called up. Passed the Senate overwhelmingly. The financial condition of the country has deteriorated since that time, as we've now faced the fiscal cliff and sequestration and other problems, and it's quite obvious the United States Congress has not even passed a budget at all in the last 4 years, certainly not a balanced budget. We're running about an additional $1 trillion a year deficit, now up to $16.5 trillion total debt. This is a mechanism for us to force Congress to live within its means, just like 49 out of the 50 states have to do through their constitutions. We've been through some rough times here in Georgia the last 5 years, and I think we've done a good job as a legislature to live within our means and balance our budget. It's a responsible way to run your government. I'd like to see the United States treat its budget the same way. And that's what this calls for. In your folder, there's also a copy of Senate Bill 206. That's companion legislation. It's just like enabling legislation, essentially, that has already passed the Senate as well and has already passed out of your committee, Interstate Cooperation Committee, passed it a couple of weeks ago, actually. What this does is appease fears. If you received any emails on this subject at all, there are some people that have a fear that this type of amendment convention might get out of hand, be a runaway convention, and rewrite the Constitution. I don't believe that fear is well-founded, because any amendment proposed by the convention would still have to be ratified by 3/4 of the states. So it's a built-in check and balance. But Senate Bill 206 is a delegate limitation act that sets forth how the state of Georgia's delegates would be selected to go to an amendment convention, and 2 would be appointed by the governor, 2 would be appointed by the speaker, and 2 by the lieutenant governor. Those 6 would then among themselves elect a 7th, and those people would represent the state at this convention.
Let's back over that part. How are the individuals selected from various states, and is it a different number?
It can be different from every state. Senate Bill 206 mandates that there only be 1 vote per state, but each state would be left to their own devices how to select their delegates. Some might have them elected. Some may have them appointed or different. There may be legislators. It could be anything. But this sets forth in Georgia to participate in such a convention. We want each state to have 1 vote, and we would have 7 delegates appointed, 2 by the governor, 2 by the speaker, 2 by the LG, and 1 by those. They would have to take an oath. And their oath would be that they would consider only a balanced budget amendment, that single subject. They would not be authorized to act outside of that. They could also receive instructions from us as a legislature to tell them what we want in the terms of the balanced budget amendment. And they could be recalled if any of them veered outside of the authority that we granted them there or didn't follow the instructions that the legislature gave them. The only exception that's built in is a state of national emergency. Otherwise, we need to be spending the amount of money that we're generating and not going further in debt. So, Mr. Chairman, I think it's a pretty concise issue. I will state last year when this came through, there was some opposition from the Atlanta Tea Party Patriots, Debbie Dooley and Julianne Thompson. I had a meeting with them and explained this to them, and I'm authorized to state they are 100% behind this. This year, I think you would probably have very few emails. There's somebody down in Valdosta, that Tea Party group, that has contacted me. I've replied to them and tried to explain to look at 206, but otherwise I have had no opposition, no negative feedback on this whatsoever this year. This passed out of actually it was Jay Powell, Subcommittee Chairman Welch, chaired it unanimously earlier this week, and I really don't think it's a partisan issue at all. This very identical amendment passed in 1976 when obviously the legislature was 90% democratically controlled. It's a fiscal responsibility, fiscally conservative bill, but it is not a partisan bill at all. I don't foresee any problems in it getting broad bipartisan support.
Very good. Questions of the presenter from members of the committee? I've got a couple of things just to go back over. It's a long time since I've been involved with studying the Constitution in this regard, but the Constitution provides for each state to have one vote at a constitutional convention. Is that correct?
It doesn't specify.
It does not specify.
It just says there will be a convention of the states. I think the natural implication from that, and us being a federation of states, is that there would be one vote per state. That's the way the original Constitutional Convention was run.
That's a good question. So when we last had a convention of this form, it was when they adopted the current Constitution.
Right.
So they went from the Confederation
Exactly.
form of government to a federalist form of government. And that was with 13 colonies, each having one vote at that time, right?
That's right.
States. Okay. And I think the other important thing that you mentioned is that they only make the recommendation of a provision. It has to come back to all states.
Absolutely.
It requires by constitutional provision for 3/4 of the states to approve any amendment to the Constitution.
That is correct, and that's a very important point to note. And people that have this fear of a runaway convention make the assumption that that convention can amend the Constitution by its unilateral action. All it can do is propose an amendment, and it has to be ratified by 3/4. That's in Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution.
The ratification will be by legislative
Yes,
act as opposed to referendum.
exactly.
Okay. Ms. Oliver, do you have a question?
No, sir.
Somebody? Oh, I'm sorry. You're recognizing Mr. Welch. Pardon.
Senator Cowser, how many states have balanced budgets, or at least by legislation or by constitution are required to have a balanced budget?
49 out of the 50 states, Vermont being the only exception, and I think they generally run a balanced budget. They just don't have a provision like Georgia and all the other 49 states do. 19 other states have already enacted this balanced budget amendment, the request for an amendment convention. We need to get to 34 before Congress is forced to act.
And this is legislation, a resolution looking prospectively to ensure a balanced budget and more fiscal restraint on the part of the federal government. When was the last time the Congress took up this particular issue, trying to amend it itself?
This was taken up 2 years ago, and it failed. You know, Congress has demonstrated that they will not. In fact, that was one of the terms, I believe, of the fiscal cliff, of the expansion. Really, even before that, when they extended the debt ceiling about 18 months ago, part of the deal was that the Speaker of the House would allow it to come for a vote, and it came for a vote, and it failed in the House of Representatives. So Congress is not going to do it on their own.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it like 1986 or so, 85, that Congress came one vote short of passage?
Right. The same thing has come up over the years. In fact, it was one of Ronald Reagan's big proposals. And back in 1980, we came one state short of requiring this type of convention. And in 1995, we became one U.S. Senate vote short of passing a proposed constitutional balanced budget amendment. So we've been on the verge a couple of times, but now things are much worse financially.
So we haven't had success with Congress regulating itself with an amendment. So that's kind of why you're here, looking to get all the states to impose their will on Congress.
And that's one of the beauties of the Constitution. It gave these dual methods, because there are certain things that Congress is hesitant to do to limit their own power. I mean, right now they got the power to print the money, spend whatever they want to. We have $45,000 in debt per citizen of the United States right now. So a kid getting born today has already got credit card debt of $45,000 that we have spent. The money's been spent, it's owed. We just need to end that.
Thank you. Anything further of the presenter? We appreciate your
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
bringing this to our attention. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to address the committee on Senate Resolution 371? If not, we will close off further public input. The resolution is now in the rest committee. The chair will entertain motions.
Move recommendation to pass.
Second. Motion do pass with a second. Any further discussion on the motion? Are there any amendments? There being no amendments, the chair will call for the main question, which is do pass Senate Resolution 371. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion. Chair rules, the motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Chairman Rich Go would carry this for me.
All right, thank you. Secretary, I'm sorry. Senator Stone's not here, is he?
No, Jacobs is doing it.
You gonna do it? Okay. I want to first recognize also with us today, Judge Steve Goss. Judge, glad to have you with us. I don't know if we have anyone else in the audience with judiciary, but we're pleased to have you, sir, join us. I will have Chairman Jacobs, would you like to present the Stone Bill SB 185?
Right. This is the revisions to UCC Article 9 that the committee had already passed out. It was recommitted from the Rules Committee because the version we had in our folders had an amendment in it that was never added by the subcommittee with regard to an increase in a bankruptcy exemption. That language has been added to Senate Bill 105, which will 105. That language is in Senate Bill 105 and was always supposed to be in Senate Bill 105. So the reason the bill is back here is so that we can pass out the version and have in folders the version of the bill that passed the Senate. And so I would ask for the committee's favorable consideration of the as-passed Senate version of Senate Bill 185, which is LC 295491ER.
Thank you. Is there anyone who wish to question the presenter on Senate Bill 185? Is there anyone further, anyone in the audience who would like to address further this issue before the committee? If not, we will close off further public input. Senate Bill 185 is now in the rest of the committee. The chair will entertain motions.
You pass, Mr.
Second.
Have a motion do pass. Is it seconded? Any discussion on the motion? Any amendments? There being none, the chair will call the main question, which is do pass Senate Bill 185. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries. Next we have is Senate Bill 105. Senator Davis, is he right? There you are. Yeah, I'm sorry. Come around, please, Senator. Thank you. We'll let you pull up one of your mics here and address again your bill.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We're presenting Senate Bill 105, and I believe that you may have a copy of the latest LC as passed from the House Subcommittee meeting just a couple of days ago. What Senate Bill 105 essentially does is, again, provides a level of protections for charitable organizations that currently don't exist in code today. We've taken some great strides with the gracious help and support of our Chairman Willard and Chairman Jacobs to what we believe really perfect this bill, while taking in consideration many of the concerns that several of the stakeholders from the credit and bankruptcy community had raised as well, and we believe we've got a pretty good piece of legislation here. In lines 14 through 17, again, we're identified and recognizing all charitable organizations, those that are approved as 501c3 orgs pursuant to IRS code, and that have actually been matured, not just someone who decides that he or she is going to establish a 501c3, but someone who's been in existence for a minimum of 2 years. We've taken into consideration concerns that were raised about private foundations or family trust. And then in lines 20 through 23, the real crux of the language, we believe that we again have taken into consideration some of the key concerns raised about what constitutes a fraudulent transfer pursuant to the code in sections 18274 and 18275. We've also put in here provision for statute of limitations. Again, these were things that were worked out in concert with the members of the credit and bankruptcy community, and we feel like we've got a pretty good piece of legislation, along with Chairman Willett taking some ownership of the legislation and helping us get to where we are right now. Be happy to answer any questions. I've got with me Mr. Greg Malden, who's been instrumental in helping us draft this legislation, and certainly can speak from a legal perspective about some of the questions that may come up. But again, we appreciate your favorable support of the legislation in its current form, as it was passed out of subcommittee.
Thank you, Senator Davis. Any questions of the Senator by members of the committee? I think what we'll go back and recognize is you brought a very good bill, and there were some things that we felt need to be clarified about the matters addressing transfers into a charitable organization. So we want to be sure that the current law, where there may be an fraudulent attempt to avoid creditors in that matter, was addressed under paragraph B, and if there was knowledge of the charitable organization of that, they were then participating, and that would still be allowed to be set aside. There's a 2-year statute limitation, which we use to match the same as the bankruptcy.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. Again, I appreciate your wisdom in helping us get to that place. There were a few things that we certainly had oversight of, but you were very gracious in helping us get to that point.
All right, thank you. If there's no further questions, we appreciate it. Does anyone else in the audience wish to address the committee on 105? We have some people to address here. Jimmy McDonald.
Yeah, just from here, Mr. Chairman, we just want to say on behalf of the Issue Shield and the various coalition of nonprofits we represent, we'd just like to say we support the bill as written. And thank you for your work and Chairman Jacobs' work on it.
Thank you. Greg Malden, National Christian Foundation.
That's me, and I'll echo what was just said. I was a big fan of this bill when I saw it originally, and I think in its current form it's improved and a good thing.
Billiton.
That's right, Pass. Thank you.
You're fast, okay. And Fred Bentley.
Mr. Chairman, I put Mr. Bentley's name on there because he speaks to the substitute that I passed out.
Okay.
So whenever you want to take that up, just let us know.
All right, we'll take that. We'll get through this part of it. Okay. Anything further you'd like to add, Senator Davis?
Mr. Chairman, again, and members of the committee, this is a good bill. It's been worked on. Really, it's a 2-year process, and we've worked diligently with the appropriate stakeholders. What I would ask is favorable consideration in its current form. Amendments we've heard about, have not had an opportunity to see them, but I'd like to see this bill move forward in its current form, certainly given the nature of the good work that's been done at this point. And I would ask for all of the committee members to take those things into consideration and withhold any amendments that would be brought before us.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Recognized Ms. Clinton for motion.
Mr. Chairman, I passed out LC 295681 ERS, which includes all the original language of Senator Davis's bill, as well as
as well as the information that, or the part of it that you and Vice Chairman Jacobs put into the bill at the end. The LC number that I passed out adds two parts into the substitute. Yeah, once again, LC 295681 ERS. Mr. Chairman, you want me to go ahead and we're in the posture now of explaining it for you? Okay. Mr. Chairman, this is a very much watered down version of a bill that was heard by the Banking Committee, and it did not pass. There were two pieces, very small portions of it that were taken out that I'm asking the committee to consider today. I think Representative Kelly and Judge Caldwell were on the Banking Committee, and I worked with Judge Caldwell and Fred Bentley to put this together. It basically does two things. In a situation where I would go to a bank and need to borrow some money, and the bank doesn't think I'm very creditworthy, which is probably true, I will go to somebody substantially creditworthy like Chairman Willard Wendell and ask him to be a guarantor for me. And as the bank predicted, my business fails and they have to come back and take the building from me. It simply says that before they can go after the chairman for his guarantor, they first have to foreclose on my building and take that first. The second thing it does, it says that if they decide that my loan is a bad one along with 100 others, and they're going to bundle those together and sell it to somebody who is a non-bank, basically. These companies out there that buy these and then go and try to collect on them. They have to give the chairman the opportunity to come in and pull that one out because he's a guarantor on it and pay 10% more than he would have had to pay than they were going to pay for it to the bank. So the bank actually ends up making more money. That's pretty much, Mr. Chairman, what the two pieces that I stuck in do. The reason I signed Mr. Bentley up is because he's really the expert in this area and he can probably address detailed questions, but that's what the sub does.
Is your proposed amendment addressing all the issues under Section 2?
Everything under Section 2 is mine, yes, sir. Section 3 is what y'all added, and then, of course, Section 1 is the original Senate bill.
The chair reviewed this, and Section 1 of the bill is dealing with a topic matter as to charitable gifts and how that is to be treated with regard to whether or not there can be not the exemption, but the ability after transfer to come back and undo the transfer based on quality of transfer. I'm going to rule that Section 2 is non-germane to what we have in the bill for us in House Bill 105. And that section will not be permitted. Any other amendments? You have a proposed amendment. No, I'll have several items. ERS, did you have your button pushed?
No, sir, I'm fine. Any part of the substitute. Okay.